Happy Halloween, everyone! Well, it's that time of year, isn't it? Time for scares and spooks. Well, to celebrate, I got a special gift for all of you. The final installment of NoEnd House. I know I said that last time, but let me explain. NoEnd House 3 was never finished. The author never got around to actually completing the final installment. But it's okay, because Mr.CreepyPasta is here to save the day. You see, he wrote his own final chapter to the series and gave it the conclusion that this series needed. And thanks to him, I got his blessing to read his story for each and every one of you. I want to give you a quick thank you, MCP. Thank you so much for giving me the blessing to read your story. I can only hope that I do it justice. I'd also like to thank the fellow cast members who returned to their roles for this series, so we can experience it all together, the final concluding chapter of the NoEnd House series. And as for the rest of you, sit back, relax, have a good Halloween, and most importantly, enjoy. The wall slid closed behind me and Natalie. The wall was smooth, perfectly smooth, as if the doorway was never there. Ahead of us was another room, an empty room, old and dusty. Where are we?
Room 1. I can't get us into the management room directly, and the fastest way is through.
She walked further into the room towards the door on the opposite side. She walked straight ahead, fearlessly. I couldn't help but feel like she knew something that I didn't. It was a good feeling, though. To know she wasn't afraid of the house helped me to no longer be as afraid. This can't be room 1, I said. Room 1 was filled with shitty Halloween decorations.
Room 1 is always filled with decorations. It's how the house plays with you. It knows what you're not afraid of.
But there's nothing here.
This is my room 1. I've never had a Halloween.
I didn't say anything to her, but I definitely questioned how the fuck no one could have had a Halloween. Maybe it's that family that she talked about. Maybe they never celebrated. But if she knew the house, what other option did I have to follow? She placed her hand on the doorknob and walked through the door, labeled 2. Room 2 was the same size as room 1, but this room was filled with playground equipment. Natalie's stride never broke. She continued deeper into the room, and I followed at a steady pace as well. I couldn't help but look in awe at the slides and swings we passed along the way. This was so different from my room 2. No paper ghosts or smoke machines. This was almost eerie. If I hadn't spent so much time in the house already, I would have been shocked. At some point, I must have been lost in the room, and was staring at the golden 3 that was screwed into the brown wooden door in front of me. If I hadn't caught myself, I would have had a bloody nose from bashing my head into it. I must have zoned out. I looked back at Natalie still coming through the room, looking at the swings as she went by. Out of instinct, I reached for the knob.
Wait!
In a last split second, I turned my head back to see Natalie reaching out to me before my hand touched the knob for room 3. Instantly, the room went black. My hand grasped nothing. I felt around in front of me, frantically trying to find the door that I stood in front of just a moment earlier. But there was nothing. Just blackness and silence. God damn it. I was in the blackness again. That fucking blackness that was my room 4 must be Natalie's room 3. I felt the panic rising in me again. All confidence from watching Natalie earlier was gone. I looked in all directions trying to find a wall or a door, my arms outstretched. Natalie? Where are you? I called out into the darkness. No response. She had to be in this room, just not around me. Natalie? The hum. That fucking hum was back. It was soft again and started to build. The panic was definitely back. The house knew that this was the worst thing it could give me, and it gave it to me again. I started moving. If I kept going in one direction, I'd have to find a wall. Even if it's not a door, I could follow the wall until I found the door out. I must have been moving faster than I thought. I crashed into something hard. It shook and fell over. It couldn't have been a person, but it startled me just the same. Last time I was in this room, I knew I was alone. But this time, I knew something had to be here. The flash happened, flooding the room with temporary light. It was a stool. And what rolled off of it was a flashlight. No, that couldn't be it. Why? Before I had a chance to look for the exit, the lights were out again, and I was back in the blackness. I dropped my hands and knees, searching where the afterimage of the flashlight was. I had it. I prayed that the light hadn't broken when it fell. Thank God. It still worked. The beam nearly illuminated the whole room with the light, and directly ahead of me was a handwritten 4 in black Sharpie on a glass door. Thanks to the light, I noticed the tag on the flashlight. To David. From management. I love you. The fuckers were toying with me, aren't they? But this time, I'm with... I searched the room again. Natalie was nowhere to be found. All 4 walls, the door, and no Natalie. Reluctantly, I continued to the door. Natalie was still in the house with me. I'd find her again. The glass door was fogged up. I couldn't see through it. But whatever was on the other side was cold. I opened the door and stepped in. Room 4 didn't require a flashlight. It was cold, that's for damn sure. But it wasn't dark. It was a well-lit meat locker. Row after row of cow and pig hung in all directions. Whomever this was intended to feed, they must have had a killer appetite. The chill made it hard to stay still for too long. I rubbed my hands over my exposed arms and moved one to the side, looking beyond. More meat. I continued deeper, and even more meat still. I moved further in silence. I passed by carcasses of every noticeable animal the further I went. My hands and clothes were sticky and red with the blood of the hanging beasts of all different shapes and sizes. To make things even more confusing, they started to become animals that I didn't recognize. Mammals with more than 4 legs, which didn't seem possible to me. Finally, I came across one that I did recognize. I was expecting to see this from the moment I entered the meat locker, but that didn't save my stomach from turning at the sight. A human body, skinned and decapitated, hung in my way. I tried not to look and pushed past. This was disgusting. More and more bodies hung from the ceiling closer together, and to make matters worse, the temperature was starting to rise. The bodies were suffocating enough, but the air became thick with the stench of wet rot. The bodies were squeezing me enough to almost raise me off the ground while pushing my way through. The frozen meat had become soft and squishy, pulling off chunks as I pushed my way through. I coughed and held my hand over my face to keep myself from vomiting. Little help that did. I just ended up covering myself in more blood. I couldn't do this. I couldn't move. I was going to die here. I was going to drown in the blood and the bodies. I reached my arm deeper into the bodies and rested my head on a blood-soaked ribcage, suspended in the air, drawing in breath as much as I could through my mouth. The coppery taste of blood on my tongue had taken into the air. I was losing consciousness. Something grabbed me. I was going to recoil my arm, but I couldn't. The hand had grabbed me tightly along my forearm. I was pulling back, and the hand was pulling me towards it, pulling myself out of the bodies and into room 5. Natalie looked down at me. I sat at the base of the door, and a dark blue light illuminated Natalie's look of anger. I could breathe again. Natalie was back. Finally, my panic began to subside.
Don't you ever touch a door without me.
You could have said something beforehand. This isn't my house. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get my girlfriend and get out of... A vibration in my pocket. I pulled out my phone to find another text message from Peter. Don't trust her. Natalie looked down at my phone and snatched it out of my hand. She angrily pointed the phone at me.
Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? You're talking with Peter? You can't trust me? I've told you everything about this house. I lead you back into the house and you can't trust me?
He just sent that to me. Don't fucking accuse me of anything. I gruffly snatched my phone back from her hand and shoved it back into my pocket. I pushed her to the side and moved into the room. I hadn't taken in the room until this point, but the blue lights finally made sense. We were in an indoor pool, lit around the edges by lights just under the surface. What is this?
My room 5.
We walked over to the pool and looked in. I could see the bottom, with a lighted 6. Next to the edge was a yellow scuba tank. Just one. I knelt beside it as she dipped her fingers into the waters to test it. She didn't recoil or scream, so as far as I could tell, the water was safe enough. I inspected the tank. As expected, there was another note. With love. From management. Fucking management. Was it Peter that was giving me these things? If it was, why? Why help me? I ripped off the tag and placed it in my pocket and picked up the tank. I handed it to Natalie. We're going to have to share.
And you can trust me with it? I want my house back, David. I want to control this house. Do you trust me more than Peter?
I did not look away from her. I weighed her. I had no idea why she would want this house, but I needed her. I shook my hand for her to take the tank from me. She did, and fixed the rebreather into her mouth. I needed her, but I didn't trust her. Two things became apparent when entering the water. The lights on the 6 at the bottom of the pool were off as soon as we entered, and the water was surprisingly warm. If I didn't feel like my life was in danger, I might have actually enjoyed this swim. We dove down, and it quickly became evident that the 6 at the bottom did not signify 6 feet. The bottom seemed to drop away almost. We swam down, taking a break every so often to breathe from Natalie's rebreather. The pressure grew stronger as we descended, and the lights began to fade. After a few minutes, it felt like I should be seeing anglerfish swimming around. It became so dark. I searched my body and found the flashlight I was still holding from room 3. It couldn't hurt to try. And a beam of light shot out into the darkness in the water. I took another hit of fresh air from Natalie's rebreather. I saw her looking at the light and back up at me. Her expression told me that we would be having another heated conversation about the flashlight when we got out of the water. I pointed it downward. Still no bottom. I pressed on downward and felt a current of motion in the water above me. I turned the flashlight upward and searched the water. By this point, I couldn't even see the surface any longer. But there was nothing around me. The water was pitch black in all directions. I looked back towards Natalie, who looked at me confused. I wrote it off as another hallucination and continued downward. The house was going to get to me, and I was as jumpy as it was. The current changed again, and this time I could feel it closer. I swam close to Natalie to take another breath from the O2 tank and pointed the flashlight in all directions to check again. Still nothing but blackness. Her hand rested on my wrist, and she looked at me concerned. I tried to communicate with her, but it was impossible without speech. How do you say, "I think there's a lake monster in here," without words? Suddenly, her grip tightened and her body thrashed about. The rebreather dropped from my mouth and I grabbed her hand with mine. Her eyes showed panic as she looked down to her leg. Something was there. Something that was a deep blue or a black. I couldn't see it clearly, and I couldn't point the light directly at it with all the thrashing. I couldn't let go. I needed her. She needed to get me to the end of this house. She opened her mouth to scream, but only bubbles escaped in the pressure underwater. She needed the O2 tank or she'd drown, but there was too much going on to think of how to fix it. It happened so fast. I couldn't put it all together. Her grip loosened, and she was gone in an instant into the black water. I pointed the flashlight in the direction she went, but there was nothing. Darkness. I looked around everywhere I could think. She was gone. But the oxygen was gone as well, and panic was settling in. My chest started to burn. Finally, I looked down. I was on the bottom, and below me was a large white 6 painted perfectly on a sheet of glass. It was right here, but that was impossible. With all the thrashing, I should have been ascending, not descending, but it was the bottom all the less. I looked upward again, trying to find Natalie. I couldn't continue without her, but my air was running out, and the pressure at this depth was pushing precious oxygen out of my lungs. I turned back to the glass and bashed it with a flashlight. Nothing. Shit! I had to find a way to get through this. How was I supposed to when I was underwater? I bashed it again as hard as I could with the water resistance holding me back. A crack. Thank God, a fucking crack! I wheeled back again, but my body betrayed me, and I took in a short breath of water. I choked and held my hand over my nose and mouth. This can't be happening. There was nowhere else to go, and I can't go back up. The crack grew larger below me. I kicked it as hard as I could with my feet below me, and... I flooded into room 6 completely dry, but coughing water out of my lungs and gasping for precious air. I was on my hands and knees crying and coughing. I fell to my side. I didn't want to continue. I'd already gone through this hell once. What the hell was I doing here again? What could be worth this fucking torture?
You've been cheating.
The first time I heard that voice, I nearly jumped out of my skin. But this time, I remembered her. And just like last time, she wasn't going to let me pass out. I caught my breath, and I stood up, facing her. Just like before, the girl and the beast consumed the same space. I couldn't keep looking at her for long, but I did what I could to not show how much my head throbbed from looking at them.
You can't have a partner. That's cheating, you know.
Is she alive?
Is who alive? Maggie doesn't like the new girl.
That struck it. Maggie was here. She knew it. I was getting closer. How do you know Maggie? Is she here? Do you know where she is?
Who's Maggie?
Stop fucking with me! Ugh! Fuck this house, fuck Peter, and fuck whatever the hell you are! Give me Maggie and get me out of here!
Fine.
This time she didn't sound like the little girl. This time, she sounded like Maggie. That was the last straw. Oh, fuck you! I turned my back to the thing. I was going to move on. I ran my hands over the wall looking for the door. What did I have to do this time? I slammed my fist against the wall, searching for a hollow point with no result. It was solid. Did I need to scratch the 7 into the door again? I took my nail and started to trace the shape of the 7 into the paint.
That's not going to work.
I spun around to look at the little girl in the face and tell her to shut her goddamn mouth. But I was near speechless to find Maggie standing before me. She couldn't be real. She couldn't be there. Nonetheless, I was fighting back happy tears and the urge to run to her and hold her in my arms again. Maggie? Is this really you? Or is it the house? I have to know.
It's fine. I understand. You want Natalie back, right? Is she your new girlfriend, David?
No, it's not like that. She's helping me rescue you.
Wasn't that your fault, though? Didn't you lead me back to the house?
No, Maggie, I didn't want you to come here. I was just trying to make some quick cash.
No, David. I think you were fucking a girl behind my back. I think you told Peter to bring me here. I think you wanted me out of the way.
Maggie, this is crazy. Why would I kill you? Calm down.
No, David.
Maggie's hand slid down from behind her back, holding a surgical scalpel.
I'm done with your lying and your bullshit. I'm done with you.
Maggie, stop. The house is fucking with us, okay? This isn't you. I swear to God this isn't you, and whatever you were seeing, it wasn't me.
No, David.
She pointed the knife at herself and raised her hand into the air. The light from the one bulb shining above her gleamed off the blade. My hand came to my side. This isn't real. I swear this has to be the house fucking with me. She wouldn't say this. She couldn't do this.
This is real.
I screamed louder than I ever screamed as she plunged the knife into her chest. I watched it unfold in front of me like a horror film. She stared me right in the eyes and covered her body in blood. She repeatedly thrust the scalpel into her chest and throat over and over and over. She fell to the floor in a heap. I still stood there screaming. If this was real like she said, what had I done? When my throat was finally hoarse from screaming, I dropped to the side and held her finally. Tears were streaming down my face, and I was sobbing. All I could say was, "I'm sorry," continuously. As much as I wanted to believe that this was the house playing with me, I couldn't help it. This was Maggie. I loved this girl. And now, I looked over her wounds. Her cuts formed a 7 in her chest. If the house could laugh at me, I'm sure it would have. The tears stopped. My body shook. I wanted to scream and cry and burn this goddamn house to the ground. I placed my hand on the scalpel that was still sticking out of the 7 in Maggie's chest and pulled. I was outside. Room 8 is always outside. I sat there in front of the NoEnd House, but somehow I knew I was still in the NoEnd House. I looked around me as though I were the living dead. I was just holding my dead girlfriend. I was just there watching her yell at me, watching her break, and watching her commit suicide. Was she even really in the house? Or have I just been stuck here the whole time? The house was going too far. It was too much. I couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't anymore. I wanted out. Vibrations in my pocket again. I was shocked that my phone was still working after swimming in the pool for so long. But then again, I ended up getting out of room 5 without a drop of water on me. It was Peter.
David, you have to go home.
Peter, what the fuck is going on? I'm in the house, and this girl said that you're the one running it.
She's not wrong, and she's not right. Go home, David.
I can't. I'm back in the house already.
No, you're outside. Go home.
Fuck you. I put my phone back in my pocket and pulled out my keys. He's told me all that I need to know. If I was outside, if I was really outside, I would go to the police. I'd contact anyone that could help me. We'd tear this house down brick by brick if we had to get Maggie out. I started up my car and backed away from the house. Finally, I didn't know if it was real or not, but it felt good to at least watch the house fade into the darkness behind my car as I traveled down the dirt road. 10 minutes later, and I was finally back into town and parking my car on the street next to the police station. I turned off the car and rested my head on the steering wheel. A sigh escaped my lips. Please be real, I whispered to myself. And if it is, it's felt like years since I had actually spoken to another human being who wasn't involved with this house. I prepped myself as much as I could and got out of the car. A small stoop sat before the police station, and I hopped up the steps quick to come to the sight that I dreaded to see. Across both of the doors of the police station, in black paint, was spray painted a large 8. I shook my head in disbelief. I knew that I was still in the house, but it knew I would come here. That was insane. Peter just told me that I was outside. He was fucking with me. He was running things here. I pulled my phone from my pocket. No new text messages. Dialing 911, I placed the phone to my ear. If I couldn't go in, maybe I could call someone to come out.
David, go home and forget about the house.
I dropped my phone. That was Peter's voice. This was the house. This was the fucking house again. I ran back down the stairs to get back in my car. I started it up and drove. I had no idea where I was going or where I could go to. I just drove. Every store, every house, every fucking mailbox I passed. 8. 8s were on everything and on every street. No matter where I turned, there was the door to the next room. I couldn't enjoy being out of the house. I couldn't get help. I was helplessly trapped in the NoEnd House. I was home. I don't know how or why I drove home. I don't think I was driving home. But here I was, parked in my driveway again. The door of my car creaked open, and I looked up at my door. There was no wait. Closer and closer I came to it. But not at 8 this time. My neighbors all had 8s. But my door had a glowing green exit above it, like you would see in the halls of a school. The house had to be lying to me. This couldn't actually be the exit. But if Peter was the management, maybe he really wanted me out of the house. Maybe I was too close, and he knew I was. Freedom was right here, and all I had to do was walk out. My breathing was so much harder. I've been scared before, but how was I supposed to know anymore what was the right to do here? My hand moved to the doorknob of the exit. Why was I even here anymore? Why not risk the exit? Another vibration. Maggie's dead. Forget about her and move on. I looked at the illumination screen. Maggie. Didn't I drop my phone at the police station? I thought. I took my hand away from the doorknob. The humming was back. The house is pushing me to leave. The management wanted me to leave. Maggie couldn't be dead. I took a step back away from my door. Maggie was here. I walked down the steps of my house. Maggie needed me. I walked up to my neighbor's door with a large 8 painted on it. We were going to get out of here. Together. I entered room 8. I was in the room again. 1 chair and 1 light. The door behind me was gone again. I didn't have to turn to know that. But my eyes didn't leave what was right in front of me. Peter sat in the chair before me. He looked like he always did. No blood and no weapons. He just sat there in his t-shirt and jeans, looking me right in the eyes. He stood up and smiled at me, like he was happy to see me. I continued to look on at him. He did all of this to me. To us.
Was it worth another $500, David? Killing Natalie? Killing Maggie?
What? Me? Was this guy serious? He's going to blame me for all of this? He got me involved and he was the one running this fucking house. And he's blaming me for all of my torture? Are you real, Peter?
Am I real? Was Natalie real? Or was that the house pushing you further? Because you wanted to go through the service entrance. You wanted to cheat. And make your way in and back out again easily.
Stop it! I didn't do anything!
That's not how the NoEnd House works, David. You know that, right?
I'm doing the right thing here. I'm trying to get Maggie out.
There are consequences, David. This is your fault.
Peter, I don't care about what kind of shit you're wrapped up in, man. You want to fight witches or vampires or werewolves or whatever the fuck? I don't care. I want out. I just want Maggie and I want out.
You killed them, David. Their blood is on your hands. You had your chance to get out, David, but you didn't take it. And now the only way...
Peter's brain was in specks all over the floor, and there was a large hole through his left eye. He fell to the floor in front of me. 2. I watched 2 of the closest people to me die today. I had nothing to say. I just looked at his body as blood pooled around him on the floor from the gaping wound in his head. Natalie stood behind him with the smoking pistol in her hand. She was soaking wet and limped towards me. She was furious and exhausted. The house was really playing tricks on my mind for the past few rooms, but whatever she had seen was far more physically taxing. Tears welled up. Why couldn't we have let him live? I wanted to say. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out.
He was the door.
She said, reading my expression. I turned around to the direction she was gesturing, and there was the large, golden 9 screwed to an oak door.
He's not the real Peter. The real Peter is the management. He was probably going to talk you into killing yourself with this.
She tossed the pistol toward me, and I caught it. The barrel was still warm from the bullet she put through Peter. The Peter that had disappeared. the blood in the brains as well. I looked over the gun to find another note. Don't be afraid. With love. Management.
With love? Want to explain something to me about your relationship with Peter?
I swallowed hard. This wasn't like last time. Management was helping me. Management wanted to let me leave. Something changed. No, I wouldn't. You want to explain where you went to?
You mean after you abandoned me?
Look, I just want Maggie and to get out of this house. Whatever happened to you, I thought you were dead. She stared at me, anger in her eyes, and I stared right back, unblinking. I didn't give a shit where she'd actually been. I was at room 9, and she had done what she needed to.
Just get me my freaking house back and get out.
We walked into the lobby. On the table again was a letter that read, "Congratulations." We walked right past the front desk and to the door to room 1, which now had a metal plaque that read, "Management." The door opened with a click, and we stepped into the room. In the center of the room was a desk. All walls surrounding it had large windows showing the outside of the house. And sitting behind the desk was Maggie. On her chest was pinned, "Management." Is that her? The real her? Natalie nodded in disbelief. I ran to Maggie's side. I grabbed a hold of her shoulders and turned her towards me. She was in some kind of trance. She just stared straight ahead. I shook her a bit, trying to break her free. Maggie, is that you? Please be okay. I grabbed a hold of that accursed management pin and threw it across the room. I wanted the house to be as far away from us as it could be. Finally, her eyes focused. She was coming to. I knelt next to her and looked into her eyes, brushed the hair out of her face so she could see me clearly. Maggie, it's okay. I've got you. I've got you now. We can go home.
No, not real.
She was hysterical. She clawed and punched herself away from me. She cowered into the corner, screaming. Maggie, it's me. I swear it's me. I was confused. I looked back to Natalie. There was something wrong. Natalie bent down and picked up the pin that I had thrown. She turned it over in her hands, eyeing it like it was solid gold. She slowly placed it onto her shirt.
You didn't. I don't believe it. You actually killed him? You're the new management?
I looked back at Maggie sobbing in the corner and looked towards the windows. My hand moved over the tag on the gun again. She was management? Maggie saw me leave the house. Maggie saw me use the service entrance. Maggie saw me enter room 1. She saw me dive into the pool. She saw me drive to my house. She watched me waver and come back for her. She watched the false Peter die. She watched me walk into the management office. She was watching as I looked at the pistol in front of her. She saw me reaching for her. Maggie's tears ran down her face and looked back towards me, screaming and scratching at my arm.
You're not real.
I pulled my arm back before she could mess me up further. What's wrong with her?
She broke. The house wins. That's what always happens. The house wins. She was never ready to power the house. Peter couldn't either. Not like I could.
Natalie pinned the badge to her chest and smiled.
Peter was right. He was right all this time. The power in this house, it's intoxicating. This is my house.
You have your house back. You can fix her. You have what you want, now give me what I want. Let me and Maggie escape. I helped you. Help me.
You want to get out with Maggie? Okay.
Natalie raised her hand, pointing in Maggie's direction again. Maggie screamed and grasped at her head. She looked back up at the two standing in the office, and I was horrified to see the word exit scratched into the skin of her forehead. No. No, you can't do that.
If you want out of the house, this is the only way. You know the rules. You face a trial to go through a door. This is your trial. Shoot her, David. Set her free and get out of my house.
I won't do that. This isn't fair.
When has this house been fair? If you want out, then open the door. Do you really want to leave her like this? Suffering? Crazy? She could never have a normal life again, David.
I couldn't do that to her. Maggie was sobbing and I was holding the pistol in my hand, the weight of the gun becoming greater with each passing second. My grip on the gun tightened, and I aimed the barrel at Natalie. Let us out, or I'll kill you. Mockingly, Natalie smiled back at me.
And then you'll be management. You aren't special, David. Not like me. Never even like Peter. And then you will be trapped here forever with her. The house will make you just as crazy as that little witch of yours. Leave, David. How long have you been in the house? I'm sure you want out as badly as she does, and she's practically asking you to kill her. There's nothing for you here. There's nothing for her here. Kill her, David. End the suffering for her. She needs it.
Natalie can't be right. There must be another way out of this room. I looked to the windows. They were outside, weren't they? The doorway we came through must have been locked. But I could break the windows. I knew I could get out of here. I moved my hand to point the gun at the windows, but I couldn't stop myself. The gun pointed directly at Maggie. I pulled my arm in the other direction, and my body betrayed me again. The gun was pointed at Natalie. The house was fucking with me again. She was right. I had only one choice left. I lowered the gun to my side. I'm sorry, Maggie.
You're doing the right thing, David.
I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm so sorry. But now that I'm management, we'll be here together forever.